Hello guys, Lisa here, and I'm coming to you today with a short little question and answer video. Miss Olga had some questions that she posted on our first quilt along video in our new series where we're making a basic t-shirt quilt, and I thought it would be way easier to answer her questions this way versus trying to type it all out. Plus they were really fantastic questions, and I thought a lot of people would benefit from the answers. And so here we are today. We're going to go over her questions. And number one was, what type of needles am I going to use to piece our t-shirt quilt together? Because we're using t-shirts, I highly recommend a ballpoint needle. We're also using stabilizer on the back of our t-shirts, so that helps the sewing process a lot. And so a ballpoint or universal needle would work perfectly. The size of the needle really depends. What I would do is get a multi-pack that has several different sizes. Because the t-shirts are thicker than normal quilters cotton, and we've added a layer of stabilizer to them, you're going to want a larger needle than if you're piecing a patchwork quilt together with just cotton material. If you get a multi-pack, it would be easy to start off with a size 11, and if you notice that the thread is breaking or you have tension issues where you're getting skip stitches, then you can move up to a size 12 or 14, and you'll find that the thread and the stitches start behaving a lot better. I have some sweatshirts in the quilt that I'm doing, and so I will start off with probably a size 12, or let's see, probably a size 14 needle, which is a 90 or size 14 universal needle. But all of these needles work very well. Again, you can also get the universal needles. The 12 is usually my beginning needle that I start with, and if I have issues then I move up to the 14. Alright. She also mentioned that she was using a 50 weight thread, and I just wanted to say yay. My machine is not picky with threads, and I am certainly not a thread snob. So what I have found that my machine likes the best are these cones of thread. One's by Gutermann and the other one is Coates and Clark. And my machine really loves them. I don't have any issues with tension or skip stitches or thread breakage with my machine using these two brands of thread. And what I love about them is that they come on a large cone and it lasts me forever. Price wise, it is very budget friendly. I just have to make sure that I do clean out the bobbin area every once in a while because there is some lint with these threads. And I just put the thread on a thread stand, and if you don't have one of these, you could always throw it into a coffee cup, set it next to your machine, and so that way your thread is not rolling all over the place. But these threads generally come in a 40 to 50 weight. And so they work perfectly for piecing together the quilt top. And I don't find that there's a lot of bulk in my seams with these threads. And so that's what I love to use. Her next question was, and I hope I'm interpreting this right. The quilt that we are making in this series is a very simple, basic block style quilt, and it's great for beginners and people who are just getting started, or if you want to piece together a quick quilt top. All of the blocks are the same size, and it goes together pretty quickly and easily. Her question was, what pattern do I use if I'm cutting my t-shirts to a more custom fit for the logo? So I think the easiest way to answer that would be to let you know that Most of my quilts I piece together without a pattern, but I do use a grid, and I've come up with several different grids. And to do a quilt that all of the shirt blocks are cut in different sizes, I generally use a 4-inch grid. This 4-inch grid has 5 different quilt sizes, and the way that it works is I cut all of my blocks divisible by 4, and I add a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So each one of these blocks on paper represent a finished 4-inch block. However, when you cut your blocks out, you're going to cut them at 4.5 inches. These grids work really well because as I'm going along, I know that once each one of these squares is filled up, then I have the desired size that I wanted to achieve. So you can see each one is different. That's a lot of little squares. And one of the reasons why I like the 4-inch grid is because they have several different rulers that you can purchase to make your cutting pretty quickly, and you can mark your center and center that over the logo and use a rotary cutter and cut out your logo pretty quickly. See, they have the 4, the 8, the 12-inch. I believe there's a 16-inch. Or you can use a straight edge ruler and a cutting mat to cut different variations of a 4-inch, like 4 by 8 or 4 by 12 or 8 by 12, so on and so on. There's so many different variations you can use with a 4-inch grid, and so that's my preferred and go-to measurement and quilt guide or grid when I'm doing a custom quilt. Most of my t-shirt quilts are custom. I don't usually follow a pattern. I cut out my blocks. Either the client has requested a block style quilt or a block style quilt with sashing or a collage style quilt, and these are really great for the collage style quilts when you get down to the smaller sizes, because you can color in as you go and pretty much plan your quilt right on the grid. If you're looking for books, I highly recommend this book. I purchased this from Joann's. It has some really fantastic quilt patterns in here for using t-shirts. And a friend of mine, Roseanne, some time ago when I was doing her quilt, she had purchased this book some time ago, and she gave it to me when I was making her quilt. And they have some really cool ideas in this book. However, this method is totally different than what we are doing. They do not use stabilizer in their quilts. Funny thing is, when I first started making t-shirt quilts, I did not use stabilizer, and it was so frustrating for me. The t-shirt material is so unruly, and I personally find it way easier to stabilize my shirts. And so the money that I was saving in stabilizer, I was spending way much more time trying to work with the shirts, and my frustration was not worth the money that I saved on stabilizer. So I quickly converted over to using the stabilizer, and it made my projects go by way faster and saved me a lot of headaches. So even though there's some really fantastic ideas in this book, just know that the method is slightly different, and they do have a website. You could check them out if you're interested. Again, they do have some really great ideas for the process. So let's see. Her last question was the stitch length and width that we're going to use when we're piecing together our quilt. And I'll go over this again when we get to that part a couple of videos away from now. But just to let you know, each machine is different. I'm going to bring you over to my machine and just show you the setup. It is very simple. Again, you'll want to reference your machine and whatever your straight stitch is, but let me show you the settings on my machine. All right, we are at the machine and I just turned it on, and in doing so I want to note that my machine has some default settings. It automatically defaults to a stitch length of 2.5 and the stitch setting is 0, 0, which on my machine indicates a straight stitch. With these defaults, in doing a straight stitch, we do not have to worry about the width of our stitch because there is no width. It's automatically going to do a straight line stitching. The 2.5 stitch length is perfect for most applications that we're going to be using with our t-shirt quilts. Even with stabilizing the back of our shirt, most of the shirt blocks are going to work perfectly with a 2.5. Now, because I'm using some sweatshirts and some lightweight knit shirts in my quilt, sometimes I will adjust my stitch length to a 3.0, and that just accommodates the thickness of the materials that I'm working with and helps my machine stitch and glide through the material much easier. I do not use a walking foot on my machine. I use a 1/4 foot when I'm sewing my pieces together. A walking foot might help you if you find that your material is dragging along. You can increase your stitch length or use a walking foot. But most of the time, I am right here, 2.5 and a straight stitch. We're not going to mess with the width of our stitch whatsoever in this application. What I would recommend is if you have some extra t-shirt material, go ahead and stabilize it just like we're pretending it's one of our blocks, and experiment with the needles that you want to use, the thread that you want to use, and the settings on your machine until you get a setting that all works for you. Sometimes I find, and I have several different machines, that this setting works perfectly on this machine, but if I take it over to one of my other machines, I have to make some adjustments. So experiment. You have plenty of time. This week I'm shooting a video where we're cutting out our blocks, and then the next week we're going to start sewing our quilt top together. So you have plenty of time to experiment with your needles that I suggested, or something else that works for you, the thread, and your machine settings. All right, I think that's all the questions for today. I hope this helps you, Miss Olga. You can always feel free to ask more questions. When it's several questions, I like to go ahead and put together a small video and walk you through all of the answers. If you have questions that you would like a quick answer to, you can always hop over to my Facebook page, send me a message through there, and I generally try to answer you pretty quickly. If you have any other types of questions about any of my other videos or processes or sewing related or quilting related questions, feel free to comment below. Make sure to subscribe and follow along with our quilt series. This is going to be so much fun, you guys. I enjoy so much trying to help other people, and I learned I was a self-taught quilter, and I would have loved to have YouTube back in 1999 when I first started. So today is supposed to snow, and I'm out here in the studio working on a wedding gown quilt. And so this is one of my blocks. I just thought I would inspire someone with one of my quilt blocks. So this is what I'm doing today. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. I look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday, where we are cutting out our t-shirts for our quilts. Thanks again, Miss Olga. I hope all of you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.